It's time, Cougar Nation. Cougar Tracks. The best season analysis with BYU insider Mitch Harper on KSL News Radio and on video every day on the YouTube page for KSL Sports.
Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube page and KSL News Radio, your legacy home of the Cougars. It's a big-time Tuesday, January 13th, and I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. Let's not waste any time. Let's just jump right in to the big story with BYU football in the transfer portal.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
BYU went from 0 to 100 really quick in the transfer portal. The Cougars added 5 new players out of the transfer portal, headlined by the number 1 linebacker in the portal for the 2026 cycle, Cade Uluave, out of Mountain Ridge High School, California Golden Bears, all ACC first-team linebacker. He is officially signed and part of the BYU football program. 6'1", 235 pounds is Cade Uluave, and he has been a terror at Cal the past 3 seasons. Back in 2023, he was the Pac-12 Freshman Player of the Year. In 2025, he was a first-team All-ACC performer. He was a captain at Cal. Former Cal head coach Justin Wilcox said, quote, "Cade is everything you're looking for in a captain. He's a tireless worker and a competitor to the bone. Cade shows great leadership qualities and is a tremendous example for other guys on the team," end quote. That was last August from former Cal head coach Justin Wilcox. Big-time player who had interest from Michigan, Texas, the bluest of blue bloods. And he signs with BYU. And BYU's linebacking unit is stacked for 2026. And Kelly Poppinga, when you think of him, you think of linebackers, 1. And 2, you think back to the day when he was playing, it was that 3-4 scheme. You could have a lot of versatility now with BYU's linebackers with the addition of Cade Uluave. Massive get for the Cougars. There was a little bit of sadness over Cougar fans losing out on Leona Lafau, former Texas linebacker who signed with Colorado. But Cade Uluave is the best linebacker in the portal. Incredible closing speed. That was one of the calling cards of Jack Kelly's talents, the closing speed on Uluave, and he's all over the ball, has a nose for it, racks up tackles galore for the Cal Golden Bears the past 3 seasons. Impact player in every sense of the word. You plug him in, he's instantly going to start for BYU. It's just a matter of what type of formation are you going to run if you're Kelly Poppinga, because you got so many options. Think about this. You got Isaiah Glasgow returning. You've got Sialia Serra returning. You've got edge rusher Sam linebacker Nusi Talmoy-Payau. You add Cade Uluave. Che Bryant Strother is returning in 2026. Miles Hall, Ace Kafusi, Pearson Watson, Ephraim Asiata, Micah Kafusi, and then some young guns in Tyler Payne, Owen Borg, Pearson Watson. Big-time linebacker unit. And oh, by the way, it doesn't stop there. Kansas State transfer Jake Clifton. He signs with BYU officially as well. Former Kansas State linebacker, 6'2", 225 pounds, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, served a mission the past 2 years. He's back from his mission. He's going to be playing for BYU. And I remember in 2023, I was out in Morgantown, West Virginia, watching Kansas State versus Texas in a Big 12 game. I'm getting ready for my show prep for pregame coverage of BYU West Virginia, and I was watching the K-State Texas game, and there was a lot of chatter among BYU fans about this Jake Clifton guy because it was revealed he's a member of the church, and I think BYU TV did a feature on him in their big story, something along those lines. I can't remember exactly, but it was known that he's a member of the church, so curious to see him, and he was all over in that game. I think he had 7 or 8 tackles in that game against Texas 3 years ago. Deep, talented linebacker unit for BYU, and Uluave and Clifton only add to that. Uluave's only got 1 year of eligibility remaining. Clifton has 2 years of eligibility remaining. Keep in mind, too, he's got 3 years to play, too. He's got a redshirt year available. BYU now, according to On3, has the number 19 ranked transfer portal class in the country, number 53 by 24/7 Sports. The other additions last night, we talked about them yesterday. Paki Finau from Washington, insane upside. He's got incredible raw gifts and talents. Very curious to see how TJ Woods and BYU utilize him. Zak Yamauchi from Stanford, an interior offensive lineman, former 3-star prospect out of Bishop Gorman High School. He's into the mix. And then Junior Sia, former Utah State offensive tackle, who pretty much started all of last season. He joins BYU as well. When you see all this movement, this motion in BYU's transfer portal class, kind of makes you wonder what's changed for BYU football. I think back to a quote last year from Kalani Sitake. It was, the context here is that it was last summer at a media golf event. BYU got done with a bunch of official visits of high-profile recruits, and I asked Kalani, what is the message that you give to high-profile recruits as to why BYU is the place for them? I think this commentary is relevant now with the type of moves BYU is making in the transfer portal and roster retention, too. This was Kalani Sitake.
Honestly, in the past, it was always what we didn't have and what we couldn't provide. And those were like the things that a lot of recruits hung on in terms of why not BYU. Those aren't there anymore, so it's us kind of letting them know we're not independent anymore. We're in the Big 12. We have resources. We have commitment from our administration to invest and buy into our sports teams, not just football or basketball, but all of them. And so you see the momentum, and you see what's being created and the energy behind it. And so that's like, I wish I could take credit for it. It's not me. It's just what's happening. And so now we're in a better spot. Honestly, as a head coach, my job is to make sure that we stay humble and we do things the right way, and that we focus on what the old school principles, even with the new school stuff, right? And a lot of that has to deal with being humble and then being hungry still. So it's a fine line, but I kind of like it.
Keep in mind, that comment was well before, 6 months before Kalani Sitake got his long-term extension and the enhanced investment into him and this BYU football program. These are good times for BYU football. They are loading up and looking to build a potential college football playoff team. And these moves show that. And again, it's not going to be the number one transfer portal class. I don't think BYU's in the market to do that. They want to retain their talent. But when they identify guys like a Cade Uluave, who's got local connections to the state, he was a Mountain Ridge High standout, kind of a do-it-all guy, could kick return, running back, linebacker, he could do it all. He kind of had an injury his senior year that really limited, I think, his recruiting. BYU didn't even offer him out of high school, which is crazy to think of how good he's been in the collegiate level at Cal. Now he heads to BYU. But identifying the fits, retaining those guys, making them know there's no other place that can provide you what you want in college football. Look, there's bluest of blue bloods, yes, but BYU's knocking on the door of the playoff. If you had questions about the on-field product, if you have questions about NIL, if you had questions about the power conference structure, BYU offers that now. And going to the Big 12 changed the game for BYU. And now at the top revenue-generating sports in football and men's basketball. I know Kalani in that clip from last June said all the sports are invested. But from the main revenue-generating sports, they've got the perfect head coaches leading the way for these programs. And that's why you're seeing such success in acquiring talent, landing them, and then more importantly, retaining them. Because you look across the portal right now, BYU is not losing many guys. Yeah, they lost Max Alford to Michigan, but ultimately, you get Cade Uluave, you get Jay Clifton. You're going to have some losses. That always happens. Attrition happens. But the ability to retain in this climate is pretty impressive, and I think speaks to what Kalani Sitake is building. And I think that commentary from last June highlights this type of activity that BYU is getting currently in the portal and then constructing its 2026 roster. Let's take a break. We'll get to some BYU basketball talk as the Cougars get ready to take on the TCU Horned Frogs right here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube page. Mitch Harper with you. Every day we're talking BYU sports here on Cougar Tracks. If you haven't done so already, like this video on the KSL Sports YouTube page, or if you're listening on audio, appreciate you. Download, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and a review. Helps me out a ton. Whatever podcasting platform you're on, Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Amazon, give a 5-star rating and a review to the audio feed and subscribe to the KSL Sports YouTube and check out the videos as well on KSLSports.com. So BYU basketball is flying high, 15-1 overall in the season, an outstanding basketball team, one of the best teams in the country, and I think we've seen that to this point in the year. Yet, despite being 15-1 and winners of 12 consecutive games this season, BYU dropped in the most recent AP Top 25 poll. BYU falls 2 spots in this week's rankings, down from number 9 to number 11. BYU is the lowest ranked Power Conference one-loss team in this week's rankings. You could say Utah State's lower. They're also only a one-loss team. They checked in at number 23, first time they've appeared in the rankings. There's teams like Miami, Ohio, who are undefeated, not ranked in this top 25. But BYU, Power Conference team, 15-1, lowest ranked Power Conference team. Where have I heard that before? Sounds familiar to football. Kevin Young was asked in his weekly media availability about the toughness of the Big 12 Conference. Then he kind of riffed about the rankings, and this was KY.
No doubt that it's the best league. I mean, I think there's, 4 in the top 10, or someone just told me we dropped to 11, which I still don't get. I mean, I really don't understand how the polls work, truly. I'm not trying to be funny. We have one loss by 2 points against a number 3 team in the country in their backyard, and we were down 2 starters. So I don't understand how we drop in the polls, but that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is our league's really hard. Every night is a dogfight. The coaching is tremendous. The talent, I think, this year is even better than it was last year across the board. These jobs that we all have are extremely difficult, especially in this day and age with how much it takes to put a roster together. Then you got to get everybody on the same page. So it's a real credit, all the coaches in our league. I feel a privilege to be a part of it. I know our guys, relish every game we get a chance to go out and play in this league because there's so much, notoriety. Like the other day I had ESPN on before our game, and it was like every game was a Big 12 game, so there's a lot of eyes on, what this league does. I think Brett Yormark is a stud. I think he's a tremendous commissioner, along with Brian Thornton. The leadership at the top is really solid, and it's like I said, it's a privilege.
The nice thing about being in Big 12 basketball, it'll take care of itself, and the AP Top 25 really has no impact on Selection Sunday because there's the net, there's Ken Palm, there's BPI, there's all these different rankings and ratings, rather, that we see on a daily basis in college basketball that, unlike football, we don't see all the exact rankings and data that daily accumulated for the selection committee in college football. We see this stuff every single day with college basketball. However, the AP Top 25 is a reflection on the national view of the program. And it's surprising to me that BYU is ranked as low as they are. Yes, the win over Utah was not great, 89-84, in a game where they're favored by double digits. But at some point you say, rivalry game on the road, just get the win. Even KY talked about that on Saturday. Stats get thrown out the window. Yes, BYU probably would have liked to have started stronger. They got down 7-0 in the first 90 seconds, washed that out quickly. But, you'd like to blow them out, sure. But you got to win. You got an ability to where no matter the circumstances, no matter the attention given to A.J. DeBonsa, BYU finds a way. And they've got 3 superstars that could be at number 1 on darn near any team in college basketball. And they are all 3 together working very well and playing off each other nicely to the point where this team is humming along. And I think they've got more in them to get even better this season. Again, if you win this Saturday at Texas Tech, all this will be taken care of, and you better be climbing in the AP Top 25, because if you go to USA, United Supermarkets Arena in Lubbock, that's one of the best, toughest venues in college basketball. You win there, that to me is one of the best wins in college basketball this season. And I know Texas Tech's lost 4 games, but they're a top 15 team. They're still super talented with Christian Anderson and the defending Big 12 Player of the Year, JT Toppin. I was looking at some of the resumes to kind of compare the teams, say Vanderbilt and Nebraska, because they're the ones that leapfrog BYU. Vandy and Nebraska are both undefeated right now. Nebraska 16-0. Quality exhibition game, by the way. BYU lined up against Nebraska. Keep in mind, BYU lost that game, but remember, late in the game, with the game on the line, Jared McGregor was in. And I'm not trying to say that that's a diss to Jared McGregor, but I'm saying context. BYU was just, they got what they wanted out of that game. They wanted to give everyone an opportunity, and it would have been awesome to see Jared McGregor, J-Mac get a maybe game winner potentially. It's just context, because if it had been AJ and Richie and Rob Wright going down the stretch, maybe that's a different outcome on the road in Lincoln in that exhibition game. Nebraska's really good, though. They've won 20 consecutive games. But they were down big on the road at Indiana, and then they had to storm back and get a big, comeback. But anyway, the data here, just kind of looking at this, net ranking, BYU 9, Nebraska 11, Vandy 7. Some of the notable points, too, strength of schedule, Nebraska 50, BYU 42, Vanderbilt 41. Out of conference strength of schedule, to me, is where this is noteworthy, because, again, I don't want pollsters just to get caught up in what happened last week. To me, you tear down the poll and then build it out based on what the data is in front of you that week. And to this point, BYU, strength of schedule, they're all comparable, but then you factor in the difference out of conference, 55 for BYU, 87 for Vandy, 251 for Nebraska. Wins above bubble, 10 for BYU, 5 for Nebraska, 3 for Vanderbilt. BYU, quad 1, 5-1. Vandy and Nebraska, of course, undefeated at 5-0. Even if you break it out to, say, Houston, BYU strength of schedule compared to Houston. Houston's above BYU. They're at number 7 at 15-1. BYU's at number 11. Houston's strength of schedule, 67. Out of conference, 114 for the Cougs in Clutch City. And again, as you heard from Kevin Young, their one loss is to number 3 UConn without Keba, without Moo Davis. And you lost by 2 in Boston, which is basically UConn's backyard and home game. BYU should be at the low end, 6. Why are they outside the top 10? Don't get it. I don't understand it. Even, too, when you look at the fact that Clemson, they're in the top 25. They jumped into the rankings this week. Again, if the pollsters take in the whole picture and look at the body of work to this point, that doesn't suggest a drop. And when you win by 30+ against any power conference team, as BYU did against ASU, that should show dominance that, wow, that's impressive. And that didn't get acknowledged. It's crazy to me. You also look at the others receiving votes. BYU has a win over Miami. They're receiving votes. BYU's got a good resume to this point of the season. And I just don't think that it's being acknowledged by the AP poll to be only 11. But again, you've got Texas Tech. You've got Arizona looming in a few weeks. You're going to have some big games on the horizon in the Big 12 because the Big 12 schedule for BYU to this point has been somewhat light. That's fair. But to drop them 2 spots after sweeping a week of games in the Big 12, which included a road win, I could understand maybe having some critiques if you only won by 5 over Utah in the Marriott Center. I could see some criticisms of that. But on the road, souped up crowd, that's always tricky. Winning road games in the Big 12 is challenging, and to drop them, and I get it, Vandy and Nebraska are undefeated. But when you size up some of that data and metrics, now some of the predictive ratings do like Vanderbilt better than BYU. Net has Vandy at 7, BYU 9. Ken Pom has Vandy at 5, BYU at 11. Nebraska, on the meanwhile, is lower than BYU in a lot of the predictive ratings. BPI, BYU's 12, Vandy 13, Nebraska 23. T-Rank's got Vandy at 3, BYU 16, Nebraska 19. So you can split hairs. But again, you look at the talent that BYU has, how they challenge themselves in the out of conference. Their one loss is to the number 3 team in the land in their backyard in Boston. I'm with KY on that one. I thought that was a little bit silly, but it all plays itself out in college basketball. BYU controls its destiny. Go win in Lubbock, and you should be climbing into what I would say the top 5 of college basketball if you go win in Lubbock this weekend. But they first got to take care of business against TCU. Let's get a lowdown on the Horned Frogs next here on Cougar Tracks. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio and KSLSports.com. 15-1 BYU versus 11-5 TCU coming up on Wednesday night in the Marriott Center. 9 p.m. tip, 10 p.m. in the Central Time Zone in Texas. So it's going to be a late game. Big 12 After Dark on ESPN2 and right here on KSL News Radio. And to get the lowdown on this kind of up and down TCU team, joined now by TCU beat writer for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Stephen Johnson. And Stephen, at the midway point of the season, is that a fair assessment to describe this TCU team up and down? How would you assess this group?
I'll probably use the same term, or if you want to go inconsistent, I think that would be pretty accurate as well, too. So far this season, they've shown that they can pretty much play with any team in the country. They beat Florida, beat Wisconsin in back-to-back days, pushed Michigan to the brink when, we know Michigan reeled off a bunch of double-digit wins. They probably should have beat them at home in November. They were very close to beating Notre Dame in overtime as well, too. But as well as they played in all those games, it's the same team that lost to New Orleans in the season opener. They nearly lost to Incarnate Word a couple weeks later. Didn't really look impressive against North Texas. And obviously you had the collapse last week against Kansas when you're up 15, I think, in the final 5 minutes. So TCU is all over the place. Like I said, they've shown that they're capable of beating any team, but they've also shown that they can lose at any time. They're just they're undersized. They're a team that has to play a little bit more scrappy. They have one go-to scorer, but this isn't a team that necessarily has they don't have the same type of talent as your Baylor, your Arizonas, your Texas Tech. So there's a different type of talent. So there's a different type of way they have to win ball games. That can make life really difficult. It allows them to stay in games they're probably, have a less talent from that standpoint. But it also puts them in a position where it can be hard to kind of close out some teams that are, quote unquote, lesser than them.
Who is that go-to scorer right now for TCU?
I think it's David Punch, sophomore forward. I think he's one of the most improved players in the country. Don't know if he'll be good enough to make all Big 12 because the league is just so loaded this year, man. But the jump he's made last year, he was just kind of like a defender, finisher at the rim. Now he's a guy, he's handling the ball in the post. He kind of goes at bigger players. I think he understands how much of a mismatch he can be. He's the classic case of a guy that's too athletic for the bigger guys, and he's too big for those 6'6", 6'5" type of players you try to put on him. So he's the guy, I want to say he scored double digits in maybe 8 or 9 straight games. So TCU kind of goes as he goes. He has decent range, but he's not going to attempt a lot of 3-pointers. He does most of his work inside, whether that's dunking it. He has a nice post hook around that 10-foot area. So David Punch, I think, is clearly the best player on the team, man. If TCU is going to win tomorrow night, he's probably going to have a 18 to 20 points, 7 to 9 rebounds, and a bunch of blocks, I think.
And I loved his last week against Kansas. You could tell he was in pain, and he was still playing for his teammates. I'm curious, Stephen, again, talk with Stephen Johnson of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram TCU beat writer. How deflating was that loss at Kansas? Because, again, they were, up 15 in the second half, and then they had that collapse. How is this? I mean, they played Arizona. Do you expect this team to respond, or was that really a deflating moment for this group?
I guess we'll see how it goes. I mean, tomorrow night, it definitely felt, despite how bad things looked against Arizona, they did make multiple runs. They got down 20 in the first half, and I was thinking they're just going to roll over, and they're still feeling that Kansas loss. They cut it to single digits multiple times in the second half, so they still showed some fight. So I wouldn't say it was a complete deflator just in terms of the team morale and things like that. But it would not surprise me at all if they kind of reach that point. If let's say they come out tomorrow and lose by 15, that'll be 3 straight losses when it really should only be 2, because they just need to make one play against Kansas, make one free throw, make one inbounds pass, and they couldn't do it. So now they put themselves in the bind. Not only did they miss out on the quality win against Kansas, but if you start 1-3 in the league, in the past, normally it takes getting around 500 to make the NCAA tournament. So now you already put yourself in a hole. You've missed out on getting the quality win at Kansas and obviously at BYU if they lose tomorrow. So there's still plenty of time in the season, but that loss against Kansas definitely, I think, put a wrench in some of their plans and put pressure on them. They need to start stacking more quality wins if they want to make the NCAA tournament.
What is the strength of this TCU team in 2026?
It's their defense. They found a way, despite having some smaller guards with Brock Hardy and Jaden Pierre. Before the 2 games against Kansas and Arizona, I imagine their stats don't look as good now. They had a top 25 defense and defensive rating and points allowed per game. They found a way, I think, to really maximize the defense around the strengths of their players. They don't really have – Punch is a good rim protector, but they don't have that 6'10", 6'11" guy that's just going to be swatting everything in the lane. So a lot of it, they have to switch a lot. They have to force a lot of steals. They have to force a lot of turnovers. They like when the game is played, I think, at a gritty pace in the half court where they can get out and transition off defensive rebounds, off turnovers and things like that. So if they want to have any chance against BYU, I know BYU has a high-powered offense. I think they got to hold BYU under 80 points because they're just not designed as an offense to be able to win those shootouts like when they play Kansas or even like they would have had to do against Arizona.
For BYU fans, they're really intrigued with the return of former BYU guard Tanner Toolson, and he didn't play much at BYU in his one season with the Cougars, but he went on to UVU, was an all-WAC performer, and this year, coming off a 20-point performance against Arizona, how's Tanner Toolson's role evolved in Jamie Dixon's rotation since he joined this TCU program over the summer?
Well, I would probably categorize Tanner as being a spark plug for the team. Like on Saturday when he came out on 20 points, he was pretty much the only guy knocking down shots, man. And he was the one that kind of sparked both of those runs in the second half that allowed TCU to make it a game briefly. But I think he's a guy, he plays some really good defense. He crashes the glass. And when he's knocking down his outside shots, man, he's a really valuable piece for TCU. He's a guy I think should probably be playing more. Him and Micah Robinson, the sophomore forward. They're still trying to figure out their rotation in the wing with Toolson, Micah Robinson, and LT, who is a Lataris. I can't pronounce his last name, but I'm sure you know who I'm referring to. Lataris is the best shooter out the mix, but when he's not knocking down those 3-point shots, there's kind of a limit on what he brings to the court. Micah Robinson was another highly recruited, top 5 recruit in program history that's seen some positive growth, and then you have Toolson, who's kind of just like the spark plug off the bench. So they have options at the wing, including Tanner, but I think they're just looking for somebody out of that trio to kind of emerge and just take hold of that position going forward.
It's interesting. TCU has kind of a handful of connections to the state of Utah, along with Toolson, who played at BYU, former SLCC star Xavier Edmonds, who's a top JUCO prospect in this past cycle, and former Wasatch Academy center Malik Diallo. Diallo went down in game 1. I'm curious, how big of a altering moment or injury was that to this team's outlook this year, losing Diallo in game 1?
I think it changed a lot of things. Obviously they were, as Jamie Dixon will probably say at the post-game presser, practice all summer, practice all off-season at the 5, because the plan was originally to have David Punch at the 4, which is where the position he naturally wants to play, the naturally where he's suited for. So you go all season preparing for those 2 guys to be in these 2 positions, and obviously Malik is the tallest guy on the team. And then bang, he goes down in the first game of the season. So I think it changed the way they wanted to play defensively, with Malik being a rim protector. I think it kind of changed the way they wanted to play offensively as well, too, because they just Jamie Dixon, I promise you will hear this a bunch of the post-game press conference. He's going to talk about rebounding for maybe half of the time, and obviously not having Malik's presence out there obviously changed things for that. TCU might also be without their other reserve big, Vianney Slaucham, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Man, they got some names on this team. He's taking some time away from this team. He's listed at 6'10", but he's probably 6'8". He was a transfer they got from FIU during the offseason. He's taking some time away from the team, wasn't on the bench against Arizona. So they'll be without Malik. They'll be without V. So like I said, it's going to be very undersized. And I think the play of Xavier Edmonds has probably been a big reason they've been able to keep things afloat. He's another kind of undersized guy at the center, but he's skilled, man. He can do a lot in the post when he stays out of foul trouble. So they like what they have with Xavier and David Punch. It just hurts not having those two other big men, though.
Last thing for you, again, talk with Steven Johnson, TCU beat writer. You can check out his bylines at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I'm curious, Steven, this is kind of a big picture Big 12 commentary. You've seen the league for the last handful of years. Why do you think basketball gets the benefit of the doubt more so than football? I'm just kind of curious because this league kind of fights a perception battle. The league's got the branding of the best league in America in basketball. What do you think it's going to take for football? Because we were talking before this interview about TCU getting ready for Ireland coming up in August. Like, what's it going to take for football to level up to the level that basketball's at?
Well, I think Sonny Dykes said it in, I think, the win after the Alamo Bowl. For the Big 12, it's just going to come down. They got to keep winning playoff games, man. When Texas Tech goes out there and loses 23-0 and the offense doesn't even look like it can function against a top 10 team, and then you saw James Madison score 30 and Indiana kind of do what it wants, that just plays into the perception issue. There's a columnist, Dan Wolken, who I actually read a lot, who immediately after the game said, do we still need to consider the Big 12 a power conference? Even though just last year we saw Arizona State probably get robbed of a win over Texas over a controversial, I think, a fourth down call or whatever happened in that game. TCU obviously beat Michigan, but a lot of people forget about that game because obviously what happened in the national championship game, man. As Sonny points out, Michigan went 23-1 in those 2 years. TCU was the only team that beat them. So I think the only way the Big 12 can get that type of respect is they have to win those games in the postseason. I think they have to be able to schedule and get some more marquee games during the regular season where you have, like Baylor played Auburn this year and lost. So that isn't a great look. Arizona State plays Mississippi State, a bad Mississippi State team, and loses. So whether it's the playoff, the regular season, I think the bowl season helped a little bit, but with all the opt-outs, those bowl wins don't mean as much as they probably used to, if we're just being honest. So whether it's regular season or the postseason or the playoffs, I should say, the Big 12 just has to keep stacking up these wins, man, and just hope that with each win they gain a little bit more respect, especially as we maybe trend towards an eventual quote-unquote super league form between the Big 10 and the SEC.
He's Steven Johnson. Check out his work at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Covers all things TCU. Enjoy the late night game between BYU and TCU, Steven, and be reading your bylines going forward. Thanks for the time.
Yes, sir, man. Appreciate you.
That's Steven Johnson. Appreciate him for being on board with the show today. And that's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I hope you enjoyed it. Full preview of BYU TCU tomorrow and all the latest with BYU football in roster construction and the transfer portal. We'll have you up to speed on everything taking place off the field for Cougar football. Exciting times for this BYU football program. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Talk to you tomorrow here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports.